Hey there, I'm Ian Douglas. I'm the author of the website techinterview.guide, and I'm here to help people with career advancement and interview preparation. My live stream on Twitch covers topics such as company research, how to build resumes and cover letters, applying for the job, getting through interviews, and what to do during negotiations. I've coached thousands and thousands of people over the years to get jobs at the biggest tech companies in the industry, and I'm here to help you too. The following episode is taken from a longer live stream event and may contain interactions with other people in chat. Check out the end of the episode for more information. Let's get to it. So we had a question come in on chat asking, what do I think about working two full-time jobs, or a site, it's called overemployed.com, where they're encouraging people like, here's how to juggle two full-time jobs. I think it's a dangerous thing to do. I've actually heard stories where one company finds out and they fire you, and now you're down to one job. I've heard where it can be highly successful for some people, though, that they work those jobs and they are effective enough and they get like a full week worth of work done in 20 or 30 hours. And so they've got free time to go take on a second job. I would say you do need to be a little bit careful about it. And I think at a minimum, you should be transparent about it with your employers. Some benefits packages also won't, you may run into conflicts with health benefits. If you're in the United States, for example, if you get health benefits from both employers, there may be some concerns or questions about overlap of benefits and which benefit provider should pay for a particular type of healthcare if you got multiple benefits packages and so on, and how that plays in. Or do you tell one employer like, hey, I don't need benefits because I get them from my partner or something like that, which is fine. But I think at the end of the day, like, companies hire you and they want full-time effort out of you. They want your undivided attention. They want to know that you're giving them 100% of that work week that they expect from you, and what you are expected to do. Now, if you are able and willing to juggle multiple jobs to where you're working 60 to 80 hours a week, and that's a lifestyle that you're okay putting in, then I think it's fine. It would be kind of interesting to know how you would play that out on LinkedIn, or how that might play out in a GitHub profile or something like that, where if people are looking at your GitHub profile, do they see, multiple conflicting types of repos or the kinds of things that you're working on? Like if I were to take on two different roles as a developer relations advocate, if I live stream for Postman and then the next day I live stream and I'm like, hey, it's Ian, I work at GitHub or something, and my coworkers from Postman log in, they're like, you work at GitHub? What the heck? You need to be careful about that, because both companies could find out and you could get fired from both jobs. And now you have 0 jobs instead of 2 jobs. So I think you do need to be careful about it. Do you need to be sneaky about it? I think is maybe a better question. Is there anything inherently or like morally wrong with it? Again, it really comes down to the contract that you're agreeing to, the employment contract that you're agreeing to. If they expect 40 hours a week of effort out of you and you're able to juggle multiple jobs at 40 hours and you're proving that you can get your job done and you're not slacking on anything, okay. But I would probably want to be transparent with them and just say, hey, by the way, like, I'm also working, I would say I'm working part-time for some other company as well. It's not a conflict of interest, because that's a big thing too, of like, if you invent something, who owns it? Like if I say like, hey, we own anything that you invent between, your 9 to 5 job, but for me, you work say 7 a.m. to 2 p.m. and then the other job from 2 p.m. to 9 p.m. or something like that. Like, who owns that work if you invent something? Like if you invent something between 9 and 5 and I expect that, I claim ownership on that as my company, but you're also working for RC Maniac's company, who gets to claim ownership of what you invent? If you come up with something, or if you come up with something that's patentable, who owns that patent? Who owns that IP? Those would be legal consequences that could get you into trouble. And end up having companies fighting and things like that. So one thing I would say is make sure that if you're going to go down that road, make sure that they are 2 jobs which have absolutely 0 interest in what one another does. Like, don't go do 2 of the same kind of, like, I'm going to go work for Netflix and Hulu, or I'm going to go be a programmer for both Uber and Lyft. Like, those will get you into serious legal ramifications. Yeah, I think you need to be really, really careful about it. Um, for me as a hiring manager, I mean, if I found out that my staff were doing that, I would probably sit down and say, you need to choose. Like, yes, maybe you're getting your work done, but at the same time, I want to know that you're dedicated to me. If there's a bug in my software, that I can make sure that you can call in, and or that I can call you after hours, and that you're going to give me that attention, and not say, well, sorry, I can't work on that because it's after hours. If there's some expectation that you're on call as part of rotation on a team or something like that can come up as a developer. And if I've got you on call and you're working some other job and I can't get a hold of you, or you're not answering that work cell phone because you're working for some other company, or some other company wants you to travel and you don't have time off with my company and I expect you in a certain time zone and you're not in that time zone, like it can start to raise some serious conflicts. So I would say be transparent about it and say, I'm working part-time. This other company wants to hire me part-time. I'm not, it's not going to conflict. If I develop anything within these hours, like it belongs to you, kind of thing. Now, some states like California is really careful about, if you develop something on your own time, it belongs to you and not the company that you work for. But again, it comes down to what that employment agreement says. Like if you're sort of on the clock from my company and you develop something, we claim ownership of that library or tool or whatever it is that you build, but the other company that you work for may also want to claim ownership of that thing. So you have to be really careful about that kind of stuff. I see many CEOs that have more than one company or job. So yes, but from that perspective, it's a little bit different once you start getting into executive leadership, because that doesn't take up 40 hours a week of their time. But when you're like lower level, like in the ranks, they expect that if you're writing code, you're writing that code for, they want 40 hours, but none of us actually code for 40 hours. You might code for 25 to 30 hours, but they want to make sure that you're giving them your undivided attention. That if that other job calls and the phone rings, like, how are you dividing up your time? How are you making sure that you're being fair and equitable to both companies, that you're giving the proper due diligence on the amount of work that you do? Also, that you're not sharing code in between, like, oh, well, I made this really cool function for this other company. Let me pull it over into this code base. It's like that other company owns that code. You can't do that. Same kind of question gets raised with using things like Google Copilot. Like if I have Google Copilot write some code, does my company own that code? Or like, where did Google Copilot actually get that code from? How did it develop that code? Using AI and machine learning, like where did it actually go sample? Did it sample out of something that's like an open source license? And now our expectation is we have to go open source our code because of where it got its code from. Like it can start to raise a lot of concerns from the legality point of view. If you're a developer, you don't need to work 8 hours a day. Maybe not, but that's my expectation. If I'm your hiring manager, I'm expecting that you're giving me 8 hours a day. Maybe you're not coding that 8 hours a day, but I expect that you're still around, that you're working on what we need you to build for that 8 hours, that you're giving me that full-time effort. If you're working for me full-time to where I'm paying you benefits and so on, then you should be giving me full-time effort, maybe not just in coding, but like collaboration, documentation, other aspects of your job should be filling up 40 hours of your week. And if you're splitting that time with some other company, it can start to raise moral concerns. And I think to me, I would want to be transparent about it and say, this is how I'm spending my time. Some people won't agree. And again, this is just my perspective. But as a hiring manager, it would raise a concern for me if I knew somebody on my team was doing that. I would sit down with them and say, I strongly encourage you to pick one. And if that other job excites you more than this one, I would rather you go work full time for that job than to split time and have me worry about whether you're actually, giving me the proper attention that I expect you're giving to this job, if I know that your attention is divided on something else. It's the same thing, like as a hiring manager, like there's kind of this stigma that the business doesn't care about you as a person. But I do as a manager. I care that you're healthy and that, I can take care of distractions and things like that. That's why companies have like bring in your laundry or bring in your dry cleaning, or, we'll take care of like child care, during the daytime or whatever. Like bring your kid to work. We've got a daycare next door and we'll just take care of daycare and stuff like that, because we want you to not feel distracted. We want to know that we can get you kind of zoned in and working on what we want you to work on. Not every company feels that same way. Like, I guarantee you there are companies out there that don't give a rip about what actually goes on in your personal life, but some do. So again, for me and my perspective, I would be concerned about that from a managerial point of view. Not everybody feels the same. It's just my opinion, my take on it. Just reading through chat and see what else is going on here. Sorry, not Google Copilot, GitHub Copilot. Thank you. In the US, it's at will employment. You can see bosses where they go, why aren't you at your desk working? I expect you to be working. They can fire you for that reason. Yeah, I mean, they can fire you for any reason, no reason, with cause, without cause. Like, they can just say, today's your last day. Thanks. Send us back your laptop. And they don't even have to give you a reason. They can just let you go for no reason at all. The world has changed. Yep. Works does have to be more flexible. I agree with that. I think developers have this power to be flexible. Yeah, but you are signing a contract, so there is flexibility, but you are also held legally responsible to the employment agreement that you are signing, saying that you are providing a certain amount of attention to the job. And they may want an expectation on like anything you develop after hours. We need to write a disclaimer saying, no, we don't claim ownership of this particular project. Like, I've done that at several jobs. Even though I'm in Colorado, and Colorado's pretty lenient about like you're able to develop things on your own time, California actually has a law that if you develop something outside of typical 9 to 5 hours that doesn't conflict with what your employer does, that you own the copyright to what you build and what you develop. Here in Colorado, it's a bit of a gray area, and so the last several of my jobs, I've actually had to write down, these are all the side projects I've got going on. These are all the little things and all the automation and stuff. Like, this is all stuff that I've written that I own the copyright to. And the company goes through and goes, okay, check. We disclaim ownership of any of these things. And if you continue to work on those things, that's fine. But if I develop something that's API related around some sort of testing or some sort of API automation or something like that, Postman's going to be like, we own that, because it's relevant to what they do as a company. And so as a software developer, I think you have to be pretty careful about how you divide that time and how and when you're developing things. If you're doing it for multiple companies at the same time, I think you need to be very careful about those work agreements. At a minimum, I would say go talk to a lawyer about it. Take them both of those job agreements and say, legally, what am I allowed to do as far as what I work on, when I work, who owns what, according to the jurisdiction of where I live and where these companies are based and things like that. Like, what could they claim ownership to, so that you have a very clear delineation of, I'm only ever going to use this laptop for this company. I'm only ever going to use this laptop for that company. And I've got my own personal system where I don't do like any work for anybody, and none of my personal stuff is on any of those work laptops. Like, then you might have a better delineation of that. But I would say talk to a lawyer about it. I'm not a lawyer, but as a hiring manager, I would be concerned if I found out that someone on my team was doing that. Thanks for checking that out. I hope that you found it helpful. I always appreciate feedback, so please let me know what you think. I appreciate any subscriptions, so please tell your friends and colleagues about it as well. Check out the website techinterview.guide for more information about when I'm live streaming and all of my free content. Drop by a live stream anytime to ask questions or message me privately, whatever makes you most comfortable. See you next time.